Good afternoon and welcome to CG Labs webinar number 8. And the focus today is digital HR, nurturing workplace culture in a digital world. And I've got two very special guests joining me today. First one is Dr. Jerry Gule, and the second is Melody Kaba. And I'll be working on the pronunciation. The quick rules of the webinar before I introduce everyone. We try and stay for 30 minutes. We've already said today we're confident we're going over. We're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Please like, share, leave your comments, leave your feedback. And also, we're really keen to get some interaction today. So start firing your questions from the beginning for both of our panelists. Again, set up a reminder, and I'll talk about next week's webinar at the end. So I'll allow the guys to introduce themselves. Please, Dr. Jerry, over to you first.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Jerry Gule. I'm the CEO of the Institute of People Management, which is based in Johannesburg. We're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year, and we'll be running our 64th consecutive conference and convention. So we're excited to be working with CG Labs, and I'm glad to be here today to share some ideas. So I look forward to interacting with the participants on this webinar. And I would like to hear what your issues are, what your problems are, what your challenges are, because that's what we're going to be talking about from an HR perspective. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jerry. And Melody, over to you.
Yes, so my name is Melody Kaba. I am a learning and development consultant, co-founder of My Future Work, which is a digital company. And what we do basically is build digital learning solutions for different institutions, including businesses. And I'm also very excited to be here today and having this conversation and really looking forward to engaging with everybody.
Brilliant. And I guess the reason we mentioned it before the webinar, the reason this is important to us is we have a product, VirtueWorks, which enables remote working. And obviously the question is, how do you keep the culture when you're not together, when you're spread around the world, or importantly in COVID times, you might be very close to each other geographically, but you're not getting that face-to-face interaction. So Jerry, I know you've got some slides. If you want to start sharing screen.
Okay, I'll do that. And the issue you're raising is really an important issue, and we'll have to cover that this afternoon. Ready?
Once you share, I will.
See my slides?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So let's get out of here and go back. Slide share. You can see them. Oh.
I'll tell you what we'll do, Jerry. I'll share it from my computer.
Okay. Cool.
You'll just have to tell me when you want me to change slides.
Okay. Cool. Do that. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Yes. So what I want to talk to you about today, if you could just move on to the next one. The next one also. Let's forget the table of content. One thing that we know, as we have alluded to, is that work has changed and will forever be changing. It has been changing for many years, but it will continue to change. I think this year, what we have seen in the first quarter of this year up to now, is that really there's been an acceleration of this particular change going into digital. We have been talking about the future of work, and it looked like it was something that was distant, something that was far, but we know now that it is here because we're working differently. We now famously call it the working from home or remote working. But this is not the end. This is actually just the beginning. And I'm sure Melody will allude to that point. This is just the beginning of the acceleration that you will see over the coming years. Go to the next one. Here is the thing that concerns me as I was thinking about working digitally and thinking about what does this all mean, particularly when the lockdown hit us here in South Africa. I know for sure that not a lot of us were prepared for, we knew it was coming, but not a lot of us were actually prepared to work remotely. It's a challenge. I was these statistics that you see here, if you look at the population of the world, and this is dated now, this is January 2019. But if you just look at penetration in worldwide, in terms of which enables people to then to be able to work remotely, you can see that there is part of the world that is really not accessing this. So access is a big, big issue. I checked again on internet penetration statistics, particularly because I wanted to look at what's happening on our continent. I mean, it's a shocking 39% of this continent, the African continent where I am, that people are saying this particular, I know stats, people present stats from different angles, but this is one statistic that I picked up, that if you look at the continent in terms of penetration and the usage of the internet, only 39%. That leaves a vast, the assumption though sometimes is that this is well spread, but clearly if this is to be believed, and this is a Q1 2020 statistic, if this is to be believed, there's a lot of work to be done. The other thing that we know is that data is not cheap across the continent, and it's something that our companies, governments have to really make accessible. So it's a big challenge. I want to know from where you are, what challenges do you see in your own environment? Is access one of those challenges that you see? And if it is, please just share on the chart there what challenges we are facing. They say worldwide, in terms of access, the statistic is 63%. So again, this tells us that there's still work to be done, but there is no going back. I mean, we have been talking about the fourth industrial revolution, what it means, the artificial intelligence, what that will do. I mean, there are industries, there are sectors of economies that have moved there, and they've moved big time. So we know it's there, we know it's working. But one thing that we cannot afford as a world, and I think COVID has taught us this, if one part of our world is lagging behind, it's going to affect other parts of the world. So because of the integration of the supply chains, I know that politically some people want to go backwards and destroy this integrated world, but I don't think that is possible. I think it would be taking the world back. We need to be moving forward as humanity in this, because again, as I say, integrate our supply chains are integrated. So digital working is vital if we're going to have efficiencies in the system across the world, because that's what we need. That would enable us to make sure that products are produced cheaply. And all that, ladies and gentlemen, go to the next slide. We know it's done by people. Our success depends on people. And right now we're looking at 5 generations of people in the workplace, all right? And that for HR calls for a lot of nifty movements, because you've got to work. By the way, when I talk about HR, I say that the first HR person is the line manager. You hire the people, the HR professional assists you to make sure that you do that correctly, you do that right, you comply if you have to comply. But when it comes to people management, getting people to work, getting these millennials that we're talking about who are flooding the workplace right now. I know the statistics says by the year, is it 2030, it will be 70% millennials in the workplace. But we can see there are workplaces where millennials are taking lead, and they are bringing brilliant energy, brilliant thinking, changing the way we look at work, and we should embrace that. So the HR professionals, one of the challenges, if you have old school HR, you're focusing on admin, not focusing on engagement and employee experience, then it's going to be a problem, because we have these generations. And I think in our organization, one of the things that, and personally, I just love working with young people, because they bring a different view, and they bring energy. So it's just finding the ways, the commonalities where we can make our organization work well. But this is not going to be reversed. And we now talk about digital natives. So these young people that we are bringing to the workplace. And by the way, as we've been talking about working from home, I mean, the whole definition of a workplace has changed, or is changing. What is a workplace? And this is, I see this as a challenge. And I wonder if you see it as a challenge yourself. Move to the next slide. What are the things that have been causing this change? Yes.
Sorry, Jerry, I was going to say, it's funny because you mentioned people not wanting to go forward. Because I think generally advancement capitalism also results in this, the burning of fossil fuels, the unsustainability of the planet. But ironically, this is one of the first advancements. And okay, COVID brought it heavily forward, but working from home, the reduction in fossil fuels, the reduction in travel, and actually is one of the first advancements where, strangely, we're also taking a step back and maybe helping the planet.
Mm-hmm. This is, I mean, particularly when the lockdown started, what the stuff, the pictures that we're seeing, what's happening, animals coming out, the environment getting clean. So, as people have said, I don't think that, I know we talk about, some people talk about going back to normal, but we know that there's not going to be going back to any normal. So we now talk about the new normal. And it's even that new normal, we haven't settled on it yet. We don't know when we're going to settle on it. So this mindset, the mindset must shift. What has been causing all this? Previously, we have been looking at these major things, these major trends that have caused the change. But COVID, I think, has really pushed all of us forward in a big way. Someone asked, what made your organization to digitize? Was it your CEO, your CTO, Chief Technology Officer, or your CIO, Chief Information Officer, or was it COVID? I think the majority of the people, the answer there is COVID. COVID has driven us to where we are today. We did not like technology, but we've got to embrace it now. Our role as HR professionals is to make sure that the education, because there is no question that people fear technology still, even today. And part of what has to happen, part of the challenge that we have to overcome is to make sure that we overcome those fears. We provide the education so that, and by education, I don't mean going to school, but the knowledge that people can utilize in order to be able to move their careers forward, move their organization, move productivity forward. So there is no going back. Next slide. And I'm about to end now because of time. I like this model. So HR professionals, and as I've said, it's about people, but it's not just about people. It's about how do we bring the right people onto here? How do we then make sure, because it's about business results or service delivery, if we're talking about the public good, the public sector. Everything that we do as HR professionals has to result in business results that are positive. Has to give us what the organization exists for, be it an NGO, be it a for-profit organization, be it a government entity. So as an HR professional, you have to fit in these roles. This is an old model from Ulrich and Friend, but I find it that these are the areas where we need to make sure that we are good at, that we play in these areas. But keeping in mind that it's not just about doing these activities, but it's about, are we achieving the results that we have set for ourselves? Now, if we are going to achieve results, the results that you expect, you've got to make sure that the culture of the organization, even working remotely, that the people understand how we do things around here. So our cultures are evolving, they have to evolve. We can't, command and control died long ago, but we still try to cling to that. I mean, one of the things that has brought stress in organizations at the moment during this time is that line managers that have no line of sight of their employees have been concerned and so backing orders, but that's not going to help. Let's go to the next one and just pass through that. So the next two, pass through that one. Okay, so I'm going to end with this slide. I'm going to end and say, if we are going to perform and do the things that we need to do in the organizations, bring the culture that we need to be building as HR professionals, audit specialists, whoever we are, we need to make sure that we work as a team. Even though people are working remotely, are we creating a culture where we are able to reach out, where we are able to communicate, or is it a matter of, I'll see you next month because you're not, I don't see you. But we have to use these digital tools to connect, to talk, to make sure that we touch base. so that we can help one another to be resilient, to work as a team. We can go into what makes exceptional teams. We know that working as a team is that it is very clear what the roles are, what the rules are, what needs to be done. So I will end it here for now, because it's a conversation, so we can talk.
Well, I think for anyone watching, get your questions into Jerry as we go. It's interesting. You brought up the spectrum of the ages, and I guess the boomers and the millennials, in most cases, are the managers, or the HR executives, the directors, and who are probably least technologically advanced, and are now the managers managing the younger generation who are technologically advanced. It's almost flipped in its head. And I guess, before where everyone was learning, or the newer parts of your team had more to learn, I guess it's us managers in this sort of the new norm that are having to learn. But I think it's a perfect segue onto Melody. Melody, as the digital expert, how do we do it? So over to you.
So, for me, one of the things that stick out with what Dr. Gule was just saying is the conversation on culture, right? Because people I think that they're probably sort of doing okay with moving, into digital, because of the fact that businesses haven't had a choice but to do it. But in the midst of that, culture plays an important role, right, in maintaining the success of this transformation. So and businesses now have to be intentional about rebuilding this culture and figuring out the type of culture that supports this new reality of the digital workplace. And that's in the policies that are put in place, that's in the support structures that are put in place, because organizations then are going to start facing loss of productivity and frustration from the workers at all levels, and retention problems as well, if the issues of culture are not addressed and organizations are not proactive, about it. It is important that even in this age of digital transformation, that we continue to reintegrate, the humanness, right, that, that we are as people. The one thing about digital is that digital doesn't make us disconnect. If anything, digital wants us to connect more. And the strange thing that happens is that when we do go digital, yes, we digitally connect, but then we also tend to disconnect in other ways. And that's where being intentional about culture as an organization then plays a vital role. I like the part where Dr. Jerry mentioned something about, I think it was about, what was it? I forgot what it was, but the thing that jumped into my head was about the fact that community now and digital community is growing, right? If you think about the world's largest community, like one community is Facebook, and that's digital, and you've got 2 billion people that live, in this one community. And if anything, it shows that, digital is definitely the future. There's no way that it's going to track back. Oh, it's the part where Dr. Jerry was talking about people want us to go back. And we actually cannot go back, right? Because if you are looking at the fact that the world's largest community is digital, and possibly that digital community is about to get a currency, and it might be the biggest country in the world, right? Depending on how the success of Libra and what happens on the Facebook market. I mean, that's also going to be interesting to just watch the evolution of that. But then going back again to the conversation, about culture, the executives as well, in the business have to make sure that this digital culture is part of the business, all the way from, onboarding, like an employee. Just because, COVID-19 is happening, it doesn't mean that businesses are no longer employing. And yes, the economy is struggling. There's all these challenges that we are facing, but there's still employment happening. So that employee that you've got right now, starting, what is the impression that they're getting about this business, especially working remotely, right? Are they feeling lonely? Are they in a place where I've just, started in this job, it's 1 month, I don't really know anyone. I mean, it's difficult. Being new in a business is difficult when you are in the office with the people every day. Can you imagine how it feels when you're working remotely? So that's even, the more reason why we need to then be intentional about the digital culture of our organization and making sure that we build digital solutions when we think about culture and organization, and purely for retainment, of employees, and just making sure that people do feel included and that those communications lines are open at all times.
I often wonder, Melody, as well about the reversal. If you're an anxious person in a large office with lots of people and you're young and you're new, it can be daunting. Yeah. And yet now in the digital world, you've got those people probably sitting at home feeling probably much more comfortable in their environment. And those of us who are comfortable, outgoing people in large environments, probably sitting at home looking at the phone thinking, I wish I'd loaded Facebook to this phone a few years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is true. So yes, of course, there is the flip side of it, because, sorry, Dr. Jerry, that there's a personality part of it as well, where you get, introverts right now, where they are having, the time of their lives. Like, I'm married to an introvert. This is like one of the best things that has ever happened to my husband, being on lockdown, because for the first time in his life, really, he doesn't have to go out and see anyone, which that's what he would prefer, right? So he's having a good time. He has no problem with it, none whatsoever. But you do get the other side of it as well, where not everybody in the world really is an introvert. And more than anything else, even with introverts, we still want to feel connected, right? Because it's part of our human nature to want to be connected. So even when you're an introvert, when you do join a team, you want to feel like you're part of that team. Despite what your personality is like, you might want to spend most of your hours working remotely on your own, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to feel like you're part of the team. You still want to be part of the team. And that's where then being intentional about culture plays a role, because you have to then ensure that that connectedness, that feeling of being connected to everybody remains. And because you will lose your employees, whether they are introverts or extroverts.
And I'm interested to know from both of your aspects, what's the pitfall? So I guess from a HR perspective, we've spent years telling people to get off their phones. We've got social media policies telling them how to interact. And yet now we're actively pushing the other way. And I guess from a digital perspective, now we've got everyone jumping onto the computers. What are the downsides that you're seeing?
Yeah. Of course, the downsides are just sitting in front of a screen and not, I mean, some people from morning, like Melody was saying earlier before we started this, that in terms of just working flat out, in the workplace, you sometimes just have to walk. If you are working in an office, you have the opportunity to walk away from your workstation. Because maybe people are walking around and asking you to stand up. So there is a challenge here from a health point of view. So this is one of the big, in fact, I've noted it as a challenge for HR professionals that they are facing right now, is to make sure that there is wellness in people's homes. That people are actually doing the right things in terms of just the economics of the thing. Because in the office space, we have people who come and design the thing for you. We don't know what's happening in your house, whether you're sitting on a stool there the whole day. So that's a challenge. And of course, the other challenge is the unreliability sometimes, depending on where you are in the world, unreliability of this, the internet, the connections that you may have. So that. In fact, it's one of the things that is driving line managers crazy, because they're now not sure. So the issue of trust comes in. So how do you build trust? And trust is key in cementing a culture of an organization. If you don't trust people, they won't trust you. But if you trust them, they will over-deliver. So culture is just so key. And therefore, we need to be taking care of people. It doesn't matter where they are. We need to be checking in, as Melody was saying. How is it going? Just that, not just talk about work all the time. Just connect with the team. How is it going? How is your family? And also understanding that part of the culture now is that if you have a child and the child shows up here, you're not going to be screaming at the child, right? You're at least at the employee and saying, why are your children disturbing you? You've got to understand the digital culture that you have to create is actually people are working away from your office. They are actually providing you space in their homes. Therefore, you've got to allow that to happen.
And we've lost Melody. I think she was just going to say something and then dropped off. But hopefully she'll come back on. Let me bring up one of the questions we've got. So, could you briefly identify the most important drivers and the most important obstacles in transforming in brackets, old school business into a successful digital one? In fact, here's Melody. Maybe I can. Melody, we lost you. Let me quickly, maybe move on to that question from Runa. I know you had something to say on what Jerry was mentioning.
Oh, yes. So a question on Runa, right? I want to just
answer
that.
Of course.
So Runa is asking a question on, could you briefly identify the most important drivers and most important obstacles in transforming an old school business into a successful digital one? So that's, what the question is. So in terms of what the drivers are, I mean, the drivers are common, right? Where COVID being, one of the drivers, the other drivers is the demands from what your clients are demanding. And you might find that now you have to start implementing other digital solutions. So there's multiple drivers and lots of research that will tell you about what the key drivers are. And it differs from one industry to another, and one business to another. One of the obstacles that we have identified really as an organization is people. People are generally the biggest obstacle when it comes from changing a business from an old school one to a digital one, because, I mean, for various reasons, right? You've got people who definitely have technophobia. They are really afraid of using technology for whatever reasons. Maybe they probably feel that they are not adequate. They have not taken a smartphone seriously. They've never used social media in their lives. And now all of a sudden, these tasks are getting automated. And now you're asking them to use this piece of technology, and there's a general fear. Another form of resistance that comes as well is when someone sees their job, part of their job getting automated, and then they have this fear that they're going to lose their job. Sometimes the fear is rational, right? In the sense that, of course, when your tasks get automated, then you will become redundant and you might lose your job. So there's also that fear. But what they fail to see is the opportunity then for innovation, right? In the sense that when I no longer have to spend 5 hours doing this particular thing, there's an opportunity for me to take this time and use it to do something else that can provide a service, right, to satisfy the customer and help the business to innovate to new markets or help to improve the ROI in the business. So people are generally the biggest obstacle. Generally it's the people. It's even, sometimes you find that it's the executive, and it's people at different places. Sometimes you find that it's the executive. Sometimes you find that it's people, who are at mid-level. And again, it really just depends on their fears. That's what the obstacle becomes. With
and if I may just add to that, I totally agree with Melody. I think it's you want to be in business. Part of what is going to drive you is what are your clients or your customers expecting of you. If you remain, so we talk about design thinking now. You start with the customer. What is the customer looking for? And do you want to respond to that? Because if you don't, somebody else will, and they say they'll grab your lunch away from you. So it's important to know where is our sector going? Are we in line? Because if we are not thinking ahead, we're going to be left behind and we'll have no lunch remaining for us. So think customer first, customer requirements, and respond to that. And I spoke about millennials. These millennials are going to be making oodles of money. Those are your customers. You can't remain behind.
I say to my kids, if you can't make money in this world with what's happening now, you've got some troubles. Let me bring up one more question. Melody says, can you share a few ideas or examples of ways businesses can be intentional about building culture in a digital remote work?
Yes. Okay. So, this is an idea, but it's also sort of like a service that we offer. And I'm not trying to sell a service, but so having really tools like virtual onboarding, right? So when you're onboarding someone, and I'm not just talking about virtual onboarding as in you do a video call with someone, but really having a tool where you've got all your different information preloaded so that when a person is joining a company, they can then go and take this online induction and they can get informed about where's what am I supposed to do, what was my predecessor working on, where do I take over from here? And that's also one of the best ways to start introducing the culture of the organization to that employee. but also even for employees that have been there for a while. Now you start to retain institutional knowledge, right, into this one space. And everyone knows that this is the place that they can use as reference whenever they need to find any information and they need to figure out where the organization is going. And that's one of the ways that you can ensure organizational culture is to actually digitize it. Digitize whatever information you have, your learnings, and whatever it is that you want to communicate to your employees about the culture of your organization.
I like the way you said not pushing products, because obviously we talk about VirtueWorks, our product for remote working, education, and events and conferencing. And now, because of our discussion with you, also parties and baby showers is the fourth vertical. For any future sales. Jerry, what about you? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, what digital does is that it makes management accessible, and they just need to know how to harness that access and engage with their people. You can hop on this thing and just reach all your employees around the world. You, of course, they're in different time zones, but digital enables you to interact with them. That's how you change, you build a culture of access. Well, before, if you're in the office and not relying on digital, you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd be writing a memo. Here, you can engage. You can engage with your employees wherever they are at any time. They can access things on demand. I mean, and that changes. You can't sit on your laurels and say we've arrived. You need to keep working and reaching out to people like Melody and driving this thing forward. And learning, and HR plays such a pivotal role in this. And I agree with people who have said that the role of HR, because we enable the learning process within organization, we enable the transformation of the culture, but we need to know where the organization is going, what the people are feeling, how we can help them. Our ear must be on the ground all the time. So, but together with the executives, reach out, talk to your staff. Use digital to do that. When I learned this the hard way, someone said, when a senior leader speaks, he creates a culture. How you speak to people, what you say, how you treat them. And so if you use such platforms as this, that you can reach out and people know your heart. You are not faking it. You are being real and genuine. You're going to transform your organization.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And Dr. Jerry, there's a quote that's just reminding me of a quote by Peter Drucker that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it doesn't matter how wonderful your strategy is. If your culture, if people are not aligning with the culture of organization, you will never get anything done. You will not see ROI in everything that you're investing in until you sort out the culture of organization.
Guys, I think that is a perfect time to wrap up. I want to say thank you both for so much for joining. It's been a really interesting topic, one that's very close to our heart as a company, but also in this COVID time. Jerry, Melody, how can people get in touch with you if they want to talk more on the topic?
Okay, well, we can give details, right? So they can reach me at jgule@ipm.co.za.
Perfect.
So Gule is so it's JGULE at ipm.co.za.
Perfect. And Melody?
So you can also reach me via my email, which is melodyx@myfuturework.co.za. You can also reach me through the company email, which is connect@myfuturework.co.za. And we are on social media on all the platforms, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. It's My Future Work. Or you can reach me on my personal social media platforms, the all Melody Xaba, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, Melody Xaba.
You see, there's a difference. There's a millennial talking. We also have those platforms, but I forgot about that.
I expected you to talk about your postal address. Guys, thank you so much for joining. It's been really informative. For everyone else, we've got Thomas Wilson from Flock Insurance next week to talk about a really innovative way that they're insuring, particularly drone operations. Again, please like, share, post any feedbacks and comments you can. And it was a pleasure to talk. Thanks very much.